Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Driven Wyld. Today we are talking about UberEats driver complains of being exploited after customer revokes tip once they receive their food. So tip baiting is one of those toxic things on some platforms that have literally kept people off of those platforms. And quite honestly, who could blame them? Every time someone gets tip baited, it ends up going viral on social media. And this time it actually went viral from Reddit, and it ended up making headline news for this website. So with that said, we are talking about everything that's being said in this article, how it actually is for Doordash, UberEats, and Grubhub drivers and customers, and everything in between. So with that said, let's get started. For many food delivery drivers, their job isn't just about delivering food, it's about scraping by and managing the financial strain that often comes with gig economy work. An UberEats driver knows firsthand how thankless a job is, especially in our anti-tip economy. Okay, first off, there are plenty of drivers that are doing really well for themselves, but majority of people are actually doing pretty well in the gig economy as a whole. Other people are just utilizing this as a side hustle. That is something that should be acknowledged in this. So I'm gonna need this to freaking relax. Second, anti-tip economy is not exactly what I would call our economy now. There are a lot of people that choose not to tip their drivers, and quite frankly, those people just don't get serviced, and that's just a fact. If you don't want to tip your driver, you don't get your order. It's really that simple. In a rant post to Reddit, the disgruntled driver shared that they felt exploited after working tirelessly, facing slow business and mounting financial pressure. They were behind on loan payments, drowning in debt, and dire need of any extra income. Yet, what set them off the most was a recent delivery where their customer revoked their tip. Look, if you don't tip your driver, I don't get it, but I understand enough that you just don't believe in tipping, so you'll place an order anyway. You're still a person that stands firm on what they believe in, so I get that much. But what's worse than not tipping, in my opinion, is tip baiting. That is where you choose to add a tip knowing damn well that the driver is going to have that tip revoked later, just so you get your order delivered faster. Number one, I get my tip back from tip baiting 99% of the time. I don't even care what anybody says. If you're not fighting for your tip back, I don't know what you're doing. But the other part of that is why would we want to work with a customer that chooses to act that way? That makes no sense. An UberEats driver reached their breaking point after a customer revoked their tip after their food was delivered. In their post, the driver explained that they chose to take a specific order because of a generous tip that came with completing the trip. Something that would absolutely be an incentive for anyone working that route, which is fair enough. That is how it should be. It's a bid for service. A lot of these gig apps, tips are treated as bids for service. And if you don't want your food at a fast rate, don't tip, but you're choosing to value your driver at a specific amount. You're violating the contract when you revoke the tip. That's just how it works. That's why customer accounts get deactivated nowadays. However, after going above and beyond, delivering the food faster than expected, keeping it hot, and maintaining a professional attitude, the customer revoked the tip altogether once the order was delivered. They wrote, "I am sick of being exploited and manipulated by people who don't give a expletive about me. I deliver on my manual bike on my own two legs in a city where I'm almost hit by cars every day. Just completely remove the tip. I've had people tip $14, $20 for the same distance in the same area. What a rude excuse for a person." Yeah, you see, that's the thing. There's going to be two kinds of people for these platforms. This is why I'm such a firm believer of choosing your clientele wisely, because you're going to have two different people on these platforms. One person is going to have a tipping customer that does the right thing by their drivers 100% of the time. They're very easy to work with. They don't give you a hard time about the gate code, nothing. Then there's the flip side of that. This customer always makes everything hard. They are super entitled. They're impossible to communicate with because they probably ghost you. They expected you 5 minutes before they even placed the order, and they're just not worth the the air they breathe, let alone yours. So who is the customer you're going to want to work with? The tipping customer. Now, the tip baiter will look like the tipping customer initially, but you gotta flag those customers. Number one, always report that to Uber Eats. And number two, mark their address in your phone. You can do that. Make sure you develop a no-go list for certain types of customers going into certain locations. Being a delivery driver is a difficult job despite the flexible schedule. In the Reddit post, the driver shared the dangerous and physically demanding nature of the job, especially if you are working on either foot or bike. In this case, beyond the physical toll of delivering in a city, the mental stress of constant financial instability, and the overall disrespect from the customer made the revocation of the tip feel like the last straw. For this driver, the job was more than just delivering food. It was an act of survival. Yeah, and that's especially true for those who are working on a bike. Yes, people who drive have their own expenses. I'm not saying that's not the case, but if that person is physically involved that much in terms of getting your order delivered and you're tip baiting them for that, what an asshole move. I don't care what anybody says. It's already an asshole move, but wow, way to prove that your deadbeat dad was right by leaving your ass, because that's the kind of person you turned out to be. Throughout the whole rant, what came across the most was feeling exploited by customers and the job itself. The user had mentioned the long working hours and anxiety of debt consuming them, and the frustration of feeling manipulated by people who don't give a blank about them. Listen, I don't care what industry you're part of. If you don't get that and you choose to be that way anyway, you're an asshole. You are part of the problem. I don't care what your obviously wrong opinion is. You should not be on any platform. You should not receive service of any kind. I really hope the worst for you. The revoked tip felt like the last straw. What should have been a reward for good service turned out to be a slap in the face. It's clear that for many drivers, the pressure to perform while dealing with these added stresses makes the job feel unfair and at times unrewarding. The anti-tip movement has been making waves in the US for the last few years, especially as many restaurants and service providers are pushing for consumers to spend more, even when a traditionally tipped service isn't provided. The problem isn't so much the movement itself, however. The problem is that in order for the movement to be successful, the employees who are forced to rely on tips need to be paid livable wage independent of tips. And that is definitely not the norm when it comes to food delivery drivers, because it's not the same industry at all. We're independent contractors, they're employees. There are self-service pumps asking for tips. There are coffee shops that are asking for tips, which is more normal but not so normal at the same time. There are people providing services for a bunch of different things that are starting to ask for tips, which there's nothing wrong with having a gratuity screen, by the way, but make sure the person that's providing that service is tipped appropriately. If the tip isn't appropriate, we shouldn't have to do that, you know? Now, to an employee, they have to service you no matter what. To an independent contractor, we'll just say no. You're a piece of shit. Nobody likes you. Your dad's a deadbeat. You're more useless than snowshoes in summer. You're as effective as a screen door on a submarine. And yeah, I get it. Landlords shouldn't be asking for tips because we know that's just a way for them to increase rents. Self-service pumps shouldn't be asking for tips, and self-serving kiosks shouldn't be asking for tips because, quite frankly, they're the ones serving themselves. Like, what? Am I gonna tip myself for bagging my own bags and shopping for my own stuff? That makes no sense. Or pumping my own gas? No. But to a gig worker, those tips are treated as bids, and it needs to be recognized as such. Is this a case of exploitation or a common symptom of the gig economy? The driver's frustration is a clear reflection of the broader issues many gig workers face: low pay, inconsistent tips, and the lack of benefits or job security. For many, the gig economy can feel like a system that thrives off the exploitation of workers by keeping them in a constant state of financial uncertainty. For Uber drivers, the tip manipulation the driver describes, where customers can choose to remove or alter their tip after delivery, adds another layer of instability to an already precarious job. I'm gonna get a lot of hate for this, but I don't think that that tips should have any kind of change post delivery. I don't care if it's higher, I don't care if it's lower. You made that commitment, that's what you stick to. If you want to tip me after, do it in cash after. I appreciate that you want to add more to the aftermath, but if that also means that you're reducing it later, that's a problem. And it seems like DoorDash actually did that right. We got to give credit where credit is due. DoorDash did do this right, to where they only allow for an increase of tips, not a decrease. It's also important to note that while the driver's experience is valid, frustration is not uncommon among gig workers in various industries. The promise of quick earnings often turns into a reality of long hours, high risk, and low reward. In some cases, workers may rely on tips to make ends meet, and the revocation of a tip, especially after a job well done, can feel like a betrayal. These inconsistencies are a symptom to a much bigger issue: the gig economy's reliance on unpredictable customer behaviors and the lack of a stable, dependable income for workers. Okay, I'm gonna push back on this very gently. If you are feeling as if your income is unstable simply because of this concept, it means you are not diversified enough, number one. And number two, you are only working on apps where that's a major thing. Uber Eats, Walmart Spark, and Instacart are pretty much the only three I know to where that's a thing. DoorDash, you can't do that. Grubhub, you can't do that. It is a big issue, and tip baiting should never have been a thing to begin with, but the reality is the reality. If you're concerned about your financial stability, you gotta make moves on your own. Maybe that means you get on more apps and diversifying your gig portfolio. Maybe that means that you're changing verticals. Are you also on package delivery? Are you also doing tasks like on Thumbtack or TaskRabbit? There are many different ways you can earn on all of these different platforms. And do you have an exit strategy? Remember, the gig economy is an income bridge to what would be a long-term goal and not the goal. You need to find a way to stabilize your own income and not depend on any one source. One of the major things you can accomplish in the Driven Wyld Discord server. The Driven Wyld Discord community is exclusive for gig workers looking to expand their knowledge and expertise in their self-employment and entrepreneurial journeys. I've partnered with high-level professionals to bring you some of the most exclusive benefits based on your personal needs as a gig worker. Exclusive professional opportunities and gig postings. More live streams with high-level professionals in our industry. Educational systems designed to help you build your own dispatch company as well as other scalable opportunities. Driven Wyld is also kicking off its Dispatching for Beginners course, or Build Your Own Delivery Service Provider course for beginners, and we are excited to help you transform how gig workers get more opportunities. So whether you're a gig worker looking for more opportunities to earn, or an exit strategy, because the gig economy is an income bridge to what would be a long-term goal and not the goal, and you would like to see something with more growth potential and scalability, there's something here for you. Check the link in the description to get started with making the most amount of money in the least amount of time and in the safest possible way. We are excited and looking forward to helping you secure your financial future. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. As always, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you guys next time.